So during the 4 Sundays of Advent, I had provided you with something of a do-it-at-home individual retreat. Each Sunday, I would provide some kind of meditation and consideration points to ponder as you prepared your hearts for the celebration of Jesus Christ on Christmas Day. So now if you remember, the very first Sunday, the theme of the reflection and the considerations had to do with desire and how important it is for us to examine the desires of our heart in prayer, to clarify those desires, and to discover what it is they truly mean and where it is that those desires are leading us. And why is it important to clarify our desires and discover their meaning? Well, because we're human beings. And if you were to ask any random human being, what is it that you desire? I would hazard to guess 99.99% of the time, they're going to name some kind of object. Oh, if I only had this, if I only had that. And they follow their desires in pursuit of objects, which at the end of the day are really only counterfeits, smokescreens. They're placeholders for what it is we truly hunger for. Because has it ever been known in the entire breadth of human history that an object ever brought anyone complete satisfaction? Oh, now that I have this, my quest is ended. I can rest satisfied. What are some of these desires that might be obscured by objects? They can be things like a desire for comfort, a desire for security, a desire for approval. With regards to the desire for approval, I could say an awful lot right now about social media, but I'm going to bite my tongue so you can thank me after Mass. And so what is necessary in clarifying our desires in prayer is to remove all of the objects and just look at the naked desire itself. What does it mean? Where does it want to lead me? What means must I take to pursue? Today's gospel provides us with a beautiful exhibit A of what it looks like in a perfect world when people truly understand their desires and follow wherever it leads. We have presented to us 3 magi, intelligent men. They were scholars. They devoted their lives to study because they desired wisdom, and they were seekers of the truth. How providential, right? How providential that they happened to have been born and lived at a time when the wisdom they desired and the truth that they were seeking should become incarnate and born of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It is God who placed that desire within them. And it was by that desire that God drew them to himself. And he placed them on a pilgrimage. And that pilgrimage concluded with an encounter with their heart's desire and the truth that they were seeking. And far from being scandalized by the poverty of the house or the poverty of Christ's swaddling clothing, they recognized, clearly by an exceptional grace that God had given them, but nonetheless they recognized the satisfaction of their heart's deepest and most profound longing. And there was nothing they could do except fall on the ground before him and worship. And rising, they offered him precious and costly gifts. But there's something interesting that happens after this encounter and after the worship of the Magi. St. Matthew goes so far as to tell us that when they returned home, they returned by another way. And why is that significant? Well, because Jesus Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And when you look at the Acts of the Apostles, what were the first Christians called? Followers of the way. And what did all of the followers of the way have in common, beginning with the three Magi? It was an encounter with Jesus Christ that was so utterly and completely transforming that they began to walk on a very, very different path. And so this brings up the whole issue of the necessity of divine worship. Let's begin by saying that just looking at the way we wired, we all have to worship something. Whether we realize it or not, we are worshiping something. Like I said, it's the way we are wired. But what do the Psalms tell us about the worship of anything less than God that is an idol of our own making? Using the image of an idol carved out of wood, the Psalms tell us those who carve idols will become like those idols. Their idols have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. They have mouths, but they cannot speak. There is never a breath on their life. And those who make them will become like them. And what is that? Lifeless and dead. Lifeless and dead. Sometimes there's that common objection, especially among the atheists, who would say about our worship of God How servile. You little slave, serving a God that forces you to worship him? That sounds egotistical. That sounds selfish. And by a human way of reasoning, and on the surface, that kind of seems to make sense. Except for one thing. It completely fails to grasp the essence of what divine worship truly is. You see, if you want to use the example of pagan worship, just as a blanket to cover anything that is not the worship of the living God, so if we were to consider pagan worship, what does it consist of? An awful lot of negotiating. It's transactional. I'll do this if you'll do that. And if you do that, I'll do this. It's not worship at all. How different is divine worship in the Christian dispensation as it has been established by God himself? There is nothing transactional about it. There is nothing to negotiate. We don't come to worship God to give him something that he does not already have. It's quite the opposite. We come to worship so God can give us what we lack. Because there's nothing we can ever say or do that can add to the greatness of God. He is all-knowing, all-powerful, ever-living, without beginning or end. There's nothing he needs. But we need him. Because that whole general rule of you become like that which you worship applies especially to Christian worship. We worship God so that we may become more like him. Let's get super duper specific. The worship of God instituted by Jesus Christ, which we celebrate each and every Sunday in the Mass, is that far from taking from us something he needs, we are offered a memorial of all that he had that he gave to us in the sacrifice of his Son. It is God who sacrificed himself for our sake. And if that were not enough, to give us that same sacrifice as something to eat and something to drink so that we can live. How confused and delusional are people who misunderstand the nature of true divine worship and its purpose. But there's another essential element to it that doesn't necessarily leap out at you. But it didn't escape St. Thomas Aquinas. And that is that there is an intimate relationship between divine worship and human freedom. We may not think that that's the case, but it absolutely is. That if you truly want to be free, you have to worship God. And why should it be the case? Well, precisely in this. It all comes back down to that refining and identifying our deepest human longings and the desires of our heart. You see, in the act of divine worship, as God works His grace, we are freed from all these counterfeits, smoke screens, placeholders, this pursuit of objects that cannot satisfy or ever provide us with any enduring happiness. And the act of divine worship completely reorients us, freeing us from these things, so that we can keep our eyes focused on that which is true, good, and beautiful. Because at the end of the day, these are truly the things we thirst for, aren't they? Truth, goodness, and beauty. And when we come to Mass with the proper dispositions and we know exactly what it is that we are doing and what it is God is trying to accomplish with us through His grace, then it completely reorients everything. And we begin to find the satisfaction for the things that our heart truly longs for. And instead of chasing stuff, He places us on a path, a new way that is going to lead to that complete and total satisfaction and the unmitigated bliss, the kingdom of heaven.